In this episode, I talk about emotional difficulties and trauma. Please do not listen if you believe any of these subjects may trigger you. The content of this episode is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. As always, seek guidance from your health care professional. This is the Living in Mid-Bloom podcast, lighthearted and heartfelt conversations about what it looks like to live, heal, and blossom in middle age. I'm your host, April Pruitt. Let's get our bloom on. Thanks everyone for joining us again. This is part 2 of my conversation with Lizzie Reynolds O'Brien. We continue our talk about what we dealt with as children and just our ongoing survival techniques, and just knowing that we have to be very vigilant as we live our lives to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for ourselves, which includes a lot of self-care.
And I remember reading, and my therapist told me, I don't know if any of your therapists told you that, but children tend to blame things on themselves.
Yeah.
Because it makes it feel safer.
Right.
It makes it easier to live in an unpredictable world for them.
Well, and I was very busy people pleasing.
Exactly.
And it was like a juggling act. It's like, okay, all right, I sense that you need this from me. Okay, you need this. And that was my way of, I guess, control.
Yeah. Parentification.
Yes. Exactly. And when I think I was that young and I was busy doing that, what I find interesting is, stories I've heard from, my family as I'm growing up, things I don't remember. I remember my parents liked to have parties, and we were my dad was in the military and we were living in Germany. I was probably like 2 or 3 or something. But, after a party, they're going to clean up the next day. So you got half cans of beer and drinks or whatever. So as I'm told this story, you ended up kind of drinking all the leftover beer but they didn't know it at the time. But I got sick. So they take me to the hospital.
Oh, dear.
And the doctor is looking concerned. He's like, she's drunk. Okay. And I'm told that my father gets mad at me.
Okay.
It's like, so, from a young age, it was like, that was all my fault too. Or I would lock myself. Again, I don't have a real memory of this, of locking myself in the bathroom.
Oh.
And then I would run the water. And I remember my mom would tell me, she's like, we hear you in there. We know you're okay. But they had to get somebody to remove the door. I wasn't opening the door. And, as I'm hearing these things, I'm thinking, I see it as I was so young, I was protecting myself.
Yeah.
Here I am locking myself. And it happened twice, is what I was told. And then they just left the door off.
The bathroom door?
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
I don't like that. I don't know why. I don't like that. You need privacy in the bathroom. That's
yes.
The bathroom door? They took that off? Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Seems excessive. You need privacy in a bathroom.
No.
Oh,
Heaven forbid anyone would try to ask, why is this?
Yeah, why? And
I wasn't real verbal.
No.
I wasn't real verbal, so.
Because you had nobody to be verbal with. You couldn't.
Yeah.
You're saying about locks on doors. When you said that, I kind of went, oh no. One of my brothers had a small bedroom at the back of the house, and I liked his bedroom because there was a lock on the door on the inside, and he was older than me, and he would go to work, and I was just small enough I could slide in without one of those locks on a screen, and I could get into his room and I could lock the door, and I felt safe in his room. And I remember going to therapy with the drawings that I put on the article last week.
Yeah.
And I showed my therapist and I said, this guy, he looks familiar, doesn't he? And she said, he looks like a rock star who we won't name. Well, I won't name him here. And I
Yeah.
said, I don't know why this particular altar looks like that person so
Mm.
much.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, my brother was a fan of that rock band, and in his room there were posters.
Ah,
And even the altar's name was not on that poster, but on a separate poster. And I said, so I literally associated everything in
wow.
that room with safety and
Yes.
protection.
Yes.
And that's why this altar looks that way, acts that way, has that name.
Wow.
And that's what, and this is just, this has been coming back. And I said to her, but I was like, this guy, he looks like someone, right? This isn't that's not just
Right.
me.
Right.
And
Right.
she was like, there has to be a reason for that. And it's the lock on the door. The lock on the door in the room that is safe has this image
And
plastered.
it's your brother's room,
And
knowing
it's
you felt safe with him as
brother's
well.
room, yeah. And the name
Is
of
he
this
still
altar,
with us, this brother?
he's a police officer.
Okay.
Okay,
Wow.
police officer, all things, yeah.
Is he aware of your experience or?
Partially aware, partially. I did try to talk to him about it way back when I was
Mhm.
trying to open up to family during
Mm.
that kind of that same period when I told my sister. And I
Mhm.
told him, and his response was incredibly disappointing. In a similar vein, it was like, "Oh well, it was
Okay.
what it was," and I was just like,
They've
you know.
tucked it away in their own way of not dealing. Yeah.
And it's interesting because earlier you were saying about do they actually have any like symptoms that they went through something? And actually, my brother, as a police officer, he recalled he was working in the domestic abuse response.
Wow. Okay.
It's a big part of their job. It's a big part of it in the UK
Wow.
and being in the US. And he said he went to a house with his partner, and they got in, and there was a man there who was raving drunk, and he was rambling, and I didn't do this, and she did it, and the wife is there, and she's been injured.
Yeah.
And the partner was like, okay, I'll try to de-escalate this. You search the house, make sure, like, is there anybody else here?
Yeah.
And so my brother walked around the house, and he was looking, and there was a closet under the stairs, and he pulled it open, and there was a small child kind of
Oh.
huddled.
Oh.
And he said the next day he went in, and his partner just said to him, "Are you okay?" And he exploded into tears.
Oh.
So I think
Wow.
it's tweaked something there. The kind of kid huddled in the corner.
Absolutely. He shared that with you?
He shared that with me.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
He then said, and I didn't really want to do that line of response anymore. And I think he then went into like drug related responses, which is more like raids on houses, that kind of thing. But
Right.
he said it was just this small girl kind of curled up,
Oh.
hiding because her parents were in the middle of a thing. And he said he came away and he was a bit like stiff. He described it, he felt stiff, which is freeze. It's the freeze
Yes.
response.
Cannot respond, cannot.
Yeah, I will freeze. This is
Right.
fine. I can do
Right.
this. This is kind of it,
Right.
right? Please. And then the next day he just broke down. So I think he remembers it a bit, but then he's kind of like, oh, but it's not, it's just that's me being silly, isn't it? That's just me being, and you're thinking, no, not really.
Right, right. But it's interesting, with the age difference, though,
Mm,
you wonder what he kind of used, what mechanism to kind of get
mm,
through it. And maybe he got there and then you bring it up.
yeah. He did use drugs,
Hmm.
cannabis
Hmm.
mainly. And that's obviously it's renowned for relaxing people, isn't it?
Right,
So I've
right,
never taken it, but I know that it relaxes people. So for him, I know he did that to get through that.
right,
I know that
right,
for a fact. And we all had our different coping mechanisms because we all went through something, particularly the girls. And my two brothers who have passed, it was alcohol related death,
oh
basically.
my
They
gosh.
drank themselves to death. And
Oh,
then two of the siblings ran away, never came back.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so you've got you've got a real
Wow.
vortex here of we're all trying to cope, but then one person goes, actually, I want to talk about that. And everyone goes, oh, no, 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 shush, shush, shush. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about it.
I mean, just you saying that, how two siblings passed, and then two that just escaped.
They ran, yeah, they did.
I mean,
They ran away.
is
Yeah.
so. Are you in touch with your father?
No, I haven't spoken to him since 2020, and I have no desire to reconnect.
Yeah.
Not at
Yeah.
all. Never. It will never happen. And his birthday is actually on Remembrance Day in the UK, which is Monday of this week. It's the 11th of the 11th.
Oh, okay.
And a couple of years ago, I was not aware of this, but I think I know who did it, who said it. Asked my mother, so how old would Dad be now? Because he's still alive. How old would he be?
Hmm.
And she said
Hmm.
she said, oh, he'd be 83 or something. And then this author said, oh, that's good because then he'll be dead soon.
Oh my
And my husband went, oh my God. And he
God.
said, your mom's face was just shock, horror. And Paul was just like, he's like, again, I kind of wanted to clap, but I'm like, don't clap, don't clap. Um,
Right, right. So you're in touch with your mom.
yeah, yeah.
How is that relationship with your mom?
It's very strained. It's very strained.
Yeah.
She was abused as part of the whole thing. Of course she was. But then there's still real anger there of
Mm,
your job was to protect me and you
right,
failed
right,
so dramatically that I
right,
developed dissociative identity disorder. You failed so much that I had to create in my psyche people who would protect me.
right. You know what?
Um,
I will just sitting here thinking about this, that the way that your mind worked for you, maybe the healthiest way when when you look at your siblings, I hope the two that left had found some happiness and joy in their life. But the
no,
two, no. Okay.
no, sorry,
Okay.
no.
Well, but looking at that, it's like it seems like that was like maybe the healthiest way for
Yeah,
you to be able to live a full
yeah.
life. And your brother, that's the police officer,
Mm,
there's something there, even though he didn't give you the response you wanted. The fact that he shared that story with you, I think,
yeah,
really says something,
it does. It does. And my therapist said something very similar because I told her that, oh, I'm the youngest of 8 kids,
Yeah, yeah.
and two of them are dead, two of them ran away, one of them is a cop, and
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
all very. It looks okay on the surface, but when you dig it a bit, you're like, actually, no, this is bad. This is all
Yeah,
really, really bad.
yeah.
And she said, maybe she was like, I would not be surprised if they had, any of your siblings had a dissociative disorder or response to that.
Mm.
She said, but you can't just go, oh, hey, sibling number one, do you have, you,
Right,
you, you can't really bring that up, can you? And
right. It's casual conversation. Yeah,
yeah, and based on the response of my sister when I told her, well, it's now kind of don't talk about it to any of them.
right, right.
That was the deal that I made with this particular author, who threw the water bottle at her, quite rightly. But this was the deal we made: so don't talk to any of them. And I was like, okay, fine, I
That's
won't.
right.
It's fine, I won't. Promise.
Oh, gosh. So, I was asking about your husband and, the
Mm.
support he's given you. So, how did your relationship begin? It sounds like you guys met when you were fairly young.
We met at college, so he was in the year below me, and we met via a friend that we both had, whose name is Nick. And my husband, when I first met him, he was very unwell in himself with his own mental
Mhm.
health. And one of my team, 99.9% sure I know which one, wanted to help him.
Hmm.
I wanted to help him too. I remember bits of it, but this
Mhm.
particular alter just really, really wanted to help him. And we became friends first. We were friends for about 3, maybe 4 months before we actually started dating. And when I say he was chosen, I mean that there were not alters, sorry, there were exes in the past who had shown signs of being abusive and
Mm.
were promptly yeeted from my life with me having no knowledge. So it was almost like the two who were near the front the most were kind of going, well, can we really trust you? Or are you gonna be like,
Mm.
you're
Mhm.
gonna be iffy, and if so, get the F out.
Right.
So yeah, we met at college. He was 17. I was coming up for 19, I think, something like that. So young, very young. He was ill. I was ill. I just didn't know.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
curious, is it the alters that were drawn to him versus you?
Mm. The altars that were drawn to him, one of my altars that it sounds very strange to say it, the same one that's going around throwing bottles and shrieking at people.
I like that one, frankly.
I like her too, but
Yeah.
she's a bit of a handful when we
Yeah.
first met. It was a bit like, can you stop shouting, please? I don't like being shouted at. Yeah, I like I like her too. She's amazing, but she is incredibly compassionate. She's so caring. My child alter says that this particular female alter is magic. She says she's magic. She
Oh,
loves her. She's like her big sister. She
yeah.
loves her to death. So she saw my husband. Well, he wasn't my husband at the time. He was a fake friend, and she was like,
Right.
something not right here. This guy's not well. And she engaged with him and they became friends. And then the other alter came out and was kind of like the defender, alter the
Right.
eyebrows up and is like,
Right. Let's take a good look at this.
you all right? You're not going to do anything, are you? Determined he was safe. And then the alter that we haven't spoken about, which is the older alter, who in the drawings is the one in the straw hat. Looks kind of like my scarecrow here, actually.
Yeah. Yes.
He was very, very, very present early in our relationship. He determined that, my husband was safe.
Hmm.
And they were all right. I mean, for God's sake, they were all completely right.
Right.
They got rid of the exes who were abusive and,
Hmm. Hmm.
they were like, no, this guy, go with him. And I
Love
was,
it.
okay, yeah, cool. But I wasn't aware of that consciously. I was just like, I feel like I know you more than I know you, and that I did. And it's weird to
Right.
say. I think that you say
Right.
that.
In an unconscious way. That
Yes. So my team had kind of determined that he was,
he was vetted and approved.
yeah, he was approved by the team basically, but I wasn't aware of that there was a team. I wasn't aware they
Right.
were there.
Right.
So I'm just like, okay, sure, sure, we'll do that.
Oh
So
my
when I
God.
found out that, my husband said quite early on he was aware that something was different. And he was like, you would talk in a different voice. And he said sometimes you would act incredibly masculine, which is the young male
Mm.
alter. Sometimes you
Hmm. Hmm.
act very, very childlike. And, other times you would
Hmm.
be almost fire personified. You'd be so fiery and feisty. And that's the one that throws things.
I
Um,
love his curiosity, though. Instead of like running for the
mm,
door, he's more
yeah.
curious about what's
Yeah.
happening.
He was, and he also has his own mental health issues,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we supported him with that as best we
And maybe
could.
that gave him some insight
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So he hasn't had an easy life by any means. His family incredibly dysfunctional.
Yeah. Yeah.
His mother, Jesus, don't get me started. I know it's a thing about mother-in-laws, but no,
Hmm.
no, no. This was something else. She left me speechless genuinely about 3 times. I was like,
Oh my gosh.
gosh. very cruel woman. So
Mm.
he was more attuned, I suppose, because he's like, I've grown up in a dysfunctional environment and I can see there's dysfunction here.
Mhm.
And, there's something I can't put my finger on, but there's something not quite
Mhm.
right there. So, yeah.
One thing I think about people that, I always heard this phrase, hurt people hurt people. Yeah, okay, we
Mm,
all know
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But a part of me is very, very grateful that I didn't have so much rage that I wanted to hurt somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm not excusing anybody who does that,
No.
but
No.
I can't not have some kind of, I don't want to say empathy, but the part of your psyche that would try to cope, try to take
Mm,
care of you. Because when you do that, there's so much self hate.
mm,
Again, I'm just grateful that I
yeah.
did not respond in that way.
Yeah. It was something I was very concerned about at one point because the anger that was there was
Yeah,
volcanic.
yeah,
It was like it's just below the surface, it's going to erupt. And I was like, oh my God. And I could
yeah,
feel it. And I was terrified that I was going to, but I never did. I was just like, oh God,
yeah.
what would I do if I hurt somebody? What would I do if, and it almost consumed
Hmm.
me in a way. I was like, I'm so
Hmm.
aware of it that I can't even begin to think what would happen if it
Oh,
erupted,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I was in my therapist's office,
Mm,
and I don't remember what we were talking about, but she said something that pissed me off. She hit the nail on the head or something,
yeah.
and I wasn't having it.
Oh no. It
And
was fun.
I threw my purse. I threw I mean, I was just, and there was still a part of me trying to control myself. I
Mm,
mean, if I had let out everything, that office would have been a disaster. But I
yeah.
could see the look of fear on her face.
Mm,
And I was like, okay, okay, April, calm. In fact, it
yeah.
was like she had to call me the next day. She said, I found some of your stuff under the couch. It's stuff that I had tossed from my purse.
I found something that you tossed. Oh, okay, cool, thank you. I was looking
Right.
for that.
And that was anger that, again, I still have anger, not as much, but it's still
Mm,
there. And then I always struggle with people say, well, anger is a secondary emotion. I'm like, is it always?
no,
No,
not always. No,
no,
you can
no.
get.
Anger that, yes, there's hurt, of course, but there's real anger.
There is real anger. There is, and it's potent, and it's we're talking about throwing stuff. The one that threw something at my sister. The fear. I actually remember saying to my therapist, the anger that this altar has scares me.
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
because rage is not the word. I don't know what the word is. I said, but this, and I remember that session very vividly because I was terrified because we just started to make contact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she was fury personified at me, the
Mm.
world, everything, everyone. She was just raging. And I just remember being like, I'm scared. I'm scared
Oh,
of this
gosh.
altar. I'm scared of her. And, my therapist said to me, I get it, but
Yeah.
she kind of made the point that if she was going to do something big, she would have done it. And she hasn't. And the fact that she's communicating with you, even
Yeah.
if it is through expletives and swearing and shouting and all that, she said that's a good thing. Listen to what she's saying, take it in, write it down if you have to, and talk to her. Don't rise to it. Don't rise to it.
Mm-hmm.
If she says anything that hits a nerve, just be like, okay, I'm not talking anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and this is the interesting part about the ages of ulcers, and this is where this comes in, and you get kind of two of my ulcers are teenagers, one of them's a child.
Mm.
You kind of think, well, I don't know of a 15-year-old girl who isn't moody.
Right. Right.
And you kind of have to go with that a bit and be like, okay, she's not having a good day. But and my therapist said to me, but what you have to remember is in this situation, as bizarre as it sounds, you're the adult. and you can go, okay,
Yeah.
pause. I don't want to talk. If you're going to talk, if you're going to be cussing me out, swearing,
Mhm.
all this, I'm not going to listen. And then she said, and just keep doing that, and then it will get easier. And I was like, are you insane? That's not going to work. It worked.
What are you talking about?
Well, you don't realize what you're dealing with. And she was like, no, I do. Not
No, and
okay.
it's interesting because
Yeah.
I guess also knowing you, she
Mm,
knew that that part of you is it's
mm,
just a process of working through that.
mm.
I'm so happy that you found somebody that has
Yes.
helped you
Yes.
and you can trust. Can't imagine anything more important.
And that's the therapeutic relationship. And what's really spooky, and I use the word spooky a lot when I talk about DID because it does still feel quite spooky.
Yes.
I do not remember finding that therapist. She appeared in my life. I don't remember searching for her. I don't remember finding her. I don't, one of my team has now taken credit and gone, that was me. But I don't remember finding her.
Mm.
Just appeared out of in the
Wow.
midst of chaos. She just kind of appeared there, and I didn't question it because you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the same with the whole process. So it was like, okay, now we've done psychotherapy. Everybody's on the same page. Now we're going to do this.
Hmm.
And I was
Hmm.
like, I don't want to do. No, we have to. Okay, and that was yeah. So
And then going through all this, and I think we had both said that we were both, you're curious about what's happening around you. You're
mm,
curious about what your boyfriend, your now husband, is sharing with you.
yeah,
And you're listening to what other people are telling you, but you're not quite ready to take it in.
mm,
I think one thing we could say is that we've worked really, really hard
yeah,
to be able to live a life that we deserve.
exactly.
It's
Yeah,
hard work
it
and it's
is.
still scary and it
Yeah,
still hurts.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
not the average person is not going to understand what that's like.
No, and I think with dissociative disorders, I heard it described as something like people that have dissociative disorders have been through something awful. And there's a channel that I watch on YouTube which is called Cinema Therapy.
Oh,
It's like they watch movies and then there's a relationship therapist and there's a film expert and they talk about the psychological themes. And they go through this process of, well, what would we diagnose this character with, or this, it's quite fun. It's
oh,
quite fun to watch.
interesting.
They were talking about one character that they diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, and there was a moment in the editing, and I was just kind of like, God, this hurts.
Yeah.
Where the relationships therapist said in such a calm way, he says, people that have dissociative identity disorder, the reason they have it is they've been through hell. And the first time I watched that, I felt like I'd been stabbed in the chest, and I was just like, I'm not ready to think about that yet.
Yeah.
Because it was
Yeah.
so early in the journey, and I was like, I
Yeah.
want it's
But it's
shut up.
interesting. I, I, I know you're like, what the?
Yeah,
This
it's
is
like,
not what I was expecting.
no, it's like, shut up, don't say that. How dare you be right? Yeah.
I love movies.
Mm,
Someday I think I'm going to make a movie, at least one.
yes.
But I find myself, I end up getting drawn into something. There's a traumatic experience, and I'm like, my mind is really working hard. It's like it's figured out how I can find these movies that kind of remind me or just is
Mm,
sharing a feeling or a story that I understand.
yeah.
For a while there, I have a spiritual therapist I work with.
Mm.
I would tell her how I used to watch these shows. It's called I Survived. And she's
Oh,
like, I know you like these. She's like, you're basically reliving how you survive, whether it's someone got mugged or someone, whatever it is. And I'm like, really? I never really thought about that. Or like when animals attack, I'm like, okay, I'm
oh,
done. I'll stop watching this crazy stuff because she's like, you're so used to being in that frame of
Yeah.
mind of survival.
Yes.
She said, you can't have a normal life and not have to be in survivor mode. And
Mm,
it was like, I didn't really understand how to feel joy. It was like, that's unfamiliar. And then when I do feel it, it scares me because I've
mhm.
never had it. I don't want to lose that.
E-
There's fear.
Exactly. And over the last month, oh Jesus, the altar that's been giving me headaches
Mm,
is the defender.
mm.
Bless his heart, he's only doing what he knows, but still.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's it's kind of like everything's been going well. Everything's going good. What's going on? Is kind of where he comes in. And it's like, what is this? And he's kind of looking around and he's not
Yes,
familiar with this level
right.
of calm.
Yes.
And
Yes.
last week, what day are we on now? Wednesday, Saturday or Sunday? He came out. This also came out completely. He came out, he took over. My husband said he found him sat on the floor of the bedroom and he was just listening and there was no sound. All he could hear was because we live in a nice area. It's quite suburban here. It's nice and quiet. It's not like,
Hmm.
loud. And my
Hmm.
husband said he found him and he was just kind of sat there listening to the sound of nothing because the house we grew up in was very chaotic. There was a lot of
Mm.
noise, shouting, slamming doors, all this. And he was sat there, and my husband said it was so quiet you could hear the budgies downstairs in the living room,
Wow.
chittering slightly. And my husband said to him, "Yeah, that's what it's like here." And because he's only ever
Oh,
come out when
wow.
it's been like, I'm going to stop a physical assault or I'm going to do this. He's used to the noise and the chaos. And so
Right.
kind of like, what's going on? Why is nothing happening? And
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
fear. It's like, I want to be happy, but I'm scared something bad's going to happen. And then
Right.
it's going to be ripped away. And then it's all over. Right. And then
Right.
he
When
go
you,
back to
you lived your
baseline.
life a certain way,
Yeah,
why would you think there could be anything else? I mean, there are
exactly.
so many extremes that
Mm,
even when I have extreme like happiness or funny or laughter,
yeah,
it makes me shrink back because it's like, oh God, I that scares me. These
that is,
strong feelings, positive
yeah.
feelings
And
scare me.
he finds it almost terrifying. And bless him, not the last time he was up, but the time before, my husband said to him, "What's scaring you?" And he said everything, because he's incredibly anxious this all time. You would be, and he's like, I get so scared of everything, but I have to not be scared because I'm the defender. I have to be
Right.
the tough one. I have to be the one that's like got a stone face, stoic. That the anxiety is very real for him, and that's what I've been going through for the last month. Fun.
Okay.
A month of anxiety. I think I've got a stomach ulcer now.
Yes, that was something else I wanted to ask you about physical manifestation of
Mhm.
all of the stress.
Oh,
I've had stomach issues all
yeah,
my life. And,
yes.
once it was confirmed about the abuse, they weren't as bad. It
Mm,
was like, okay, we've kind of discovered why I
mm,
mean, I'd go to the hospital. It's like I couldn't hold any food down. I
yeah,
mean, I would be like pooping and throwing up and I
yeah,
mean, all of this. And, they thought, oh, you have IBS or what, but all of that was stress. It's
mm,
amazing.
yeah.
The
And
body, it's just, so how does it manifest for you?
so it's very much the same. I get abdominal pain a lot. I No, that's not correct. I used to get it a lot. I don't get it so much now.
Hmm.
But the other day, my stomach was really, really bad, and this coincided with this altar being looking around, and
Yeah.
being anxious, and I was just like, oh my God, my stomach is killing me.
Yeah.
That kind of, you feel like you've got a knot in your stomach and you
Yes.
can't get rid of that horrible, fluttery, gross
Yes.
feeling. I absolutely
Yes.
makes my skin creep. But there's that, and then there's the vomiting. Not so much anymore. I used to get quite a lot of bad spells of
Mm.
gastrointestinal distress where
Yeah.
I'd be sick.
Yeah.
I used to get migraines all the time,
Oh my
all the
oh
time,
my god,
migraines.
migraines are horrible.
And that would be just debilitating. I was exhausted all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would get just pain throughout my body, just seemed to be random places, but now it's like that makes some sense that, the body keeps the score as a book that looks at that kind of thing. It's like
Yes. Yeah, I'm very familiar with it. Yes, absolutely.
you're remembering things, and the pain's coming back, and the body's going, this happened, you
Right.
know. Um,
Right.
And, I've had, I hope it's okay to talk about, I've had sexual dysfunction.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I finished psychotherapy, I was speaking to a sex therapist who was a psychotherapist just specializing in sex, in physical sex.
Mhm.
And she explained, oh, she said, what's going on? Do you have any issues? And I said, well, yeah. I said, sometimes it's like, it's, trying to have penetrative sex, and it's not
Oh,
going in.
wow.
Nothing is working. And
Yeah.
she said,
Yeah.
yes, that's vaginismus. I can't remember the name, but something like that, which is basically, she said, your body's locking down.
Protecting.
Yeah, again. And she said,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's the, even though you're with your husband and you love your husband and you want to engage in this, your body is still very much in fight, flight,
Right.
with that. And it's just going, no, we're not doing that today. And you
Yeah.
kind of go, okay, can we not do that? And it's like, nope, doing that. So, I
That's
mean,
where
it's
we
just,
are today, and this is
that's what, this is it. This is what we have to
Mhm.
do. And you're
Mhm.
not doing that. And you're thinking, okay, great, thank you. So,
Great, hopefully we'll have sex soon and,
when it decides it's going to open, it's just, she
knock
said,
on the door, "Hello."
yeah, she did say that, she said it's incredibly common with victims of SA, sexual assault. She said it's beyond common. It's your body's defense.
I've always found it comforting when someone says, "Oh, that's a normal response." That's
Yes,
okay.
yes. Okay, that's fine. I've not gone off the deep end then. I'm okay. But she said no, it's beyond normal. She said, and she sees it pretty much every day in her line of work. She says, and there's sometimes a physical reason. She said, but 9 times out of 10 it's psychological, and it's
Mhm.
just your body just going nope. So physical symptoms, mainly stomach
Yeah,
issues for sure. And
yeah.
I had the same thing. Oh, it's IBS, and I said, but I don't think it is.
Right, right.
But since therapy and since everything else, it's been a lot better. It's been a lot easier. So,
Good, good. And it has been for me, though recently, I think because I'm, making some positive changes in things that I wanna do.
mm,
And on my one of my episodes, I talk about a panic attack I had. I didn't know what it was, but
no.
I was shaking, I was crying, I was
Oh
it
my God.
and a neighbor friend of mine, thank goodness, was home and she came over and because
Oh,
I'd never experienced anything like that before.
yeah.
I mean, I've had my moments when I've disassociate and then someone tells me this is what happened. And
Yes.
I find that incredibly helpful when you've got people at least that around. But one other thing that happens sometimes is say I could be laying on the couch watching TV and then I realize that I'm tense. It's like all
Yes.
my hip area, I didn't even realize it. Then I'm like, oh, let me relax. And then a
Yeah.
few minutes later, I find myself just so
Tensing.
physically tense.
Mm.
And I know that has to do with, I know
That
the abuse. Yeah.
that's called armoring.
Oh, okay.
And my God, he's going to be the focus of this whole thing. The male alter, the defender, armors a lot, and it's basically your body prepping for
Mm.
something to happen. It's like you're
Oh,
physically tensing up and
right,
the
right.
muscles become rigid. It has an evolutionary basis, the whole thing does. I mean, everything,
Sure.
fight, flight, all that does.
Mhm.
But my husband said to me that one time when this male alter was out and he was my husband said he hugged him and he said to me, it was like hugging a tank. He
Oh,
said it's just
wow.
rock hard all over. He was like, even like here on you, he's like, it was everything it was like
Oh
hugging a
my
tank.
gosh.
And then once the armor starts to come off, I don't know if you've ever had this, you feel exhausted because you're like, I feel
Yeah,
better, but I'm exhausted. And that's
right,
because all the
right.
cortisol is gone, all of the tense muscles have just gone, okay, we're
Well, all
relaxing
the
now.
energy you've used to do that,
Yes.
and you're not even conscious of it.
No. And
And then again, it's like, oh God, it's happening again. It's just trying to.
I get that a lot with this particular alter. He
Mhm,
does armor.
mhm.
I was actually thinking about the physical symptoms of CPTSD, which tends to be things like heart palpitations. Like you'll just be sat
That's
there
what
and
I
then
had when I had my panic attack. I
yeah,
couldn't catch my breath. I was
no,
shaking. All of it was because it was like what's normal is being in a place of chaos. That was normal. I can deal with that any time of the
oh yeah,
day. I'm
yeah, yeah,
used to that.
of course.
But finding joy, finding
Hmm.
joy, oh, that's unfamiliar and therefore
Yeah,
scary. I don't know what
me
that is.
too.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
And that's how I responded to it. So
mm,
it still happens. Last night I
mm,
ate terribly and I felt like crap. But then
mm,
finally letting emotions through, I'm not exactly sure why it was, but all I know
mm,
is stuff I haven't felt yet. I know that stuff
mm.
I don't have to put a name to exactly what situation it was, but just
No,
know that, okay, good, April, let yourself work through that. And
exactly.
then, yes, feel it. It doesn't feel good. I don't like feeling that. And always remind myself that that will not last,
No,
that it will
won't.
dissipate until the next time.
It's important to, when you have a dissociative disorder, it's natural to disassociate. You kind of have to unlearn that behavior. And, I was quite, sounds terrible to say, I was quite happy kind of going through life, kind of, oh, yeah, okay,
Well, yeah, of
not
course.
feeling anything. And then it was like, oh, but you have to stop that because, you have to feel. And then it's kind of like everything hits you like a train all at once, bang. And you're kind of left going, okay, I kind of want to step back through the looking glass now.
Right,
And you're like,
right.
but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my friend this morning, the same friend that has DID, and I was talking to her about this male alter who's been very present for the last month. And she said, so what tactic are you employing at this moment to deal with him? And I just said, I go, radical acceptance. I don't know. I've run out of ideas. Radical acceptance that he's not well and that we're just
Right.
doing this. I was like, I don't know. I'm just going with it at this point.
That's funny.
I was
Right,
like,
right. I'll go with the flow, whatever that is.
yeah. And it's because there is a lot of anxiety there. And you have to feel it, you have to go through it, and you have to sit with it and accept it. And I understand for so many years why disassociation was the go-to, because that's safe.
It saved your life.
Yeah. But the emotions are going somewhere and they're going into these
Yeah,
alters. So now I've got to go back through all that
yeah.
backlog. Let's call it that.
Yeah, I like that backlog. One other thing that is so much better, and again, at the time, I wasn't quite sure I understood, but what in a therapist I was working with, I would find that, say, I'm feeling really good about something,
Yeah,
and there are times when it's like, okay, I just did something. What did I just do to make me feel happy? I was
yeah,
disconnected from, I know that feeling happened and I feel that. What caused it? Then it's
yes,
like, oh, that's right. I talked to so and so and we
yeah,
had a great conversation about blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
It's like, or Why am I sad? Something just happened. What was it? Oh, that's right. So and so made me mad. And
Yeah.
it happens now, not nearly as much.
Mm,
But every now and then it happens, and I can figure it out pretty quickly. But
mm.
it's just the strangest thing. It's like even in little moments I've pushed away, then it's like, okay, is that safe now? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. And I've had similar experiences, I think, where it's like, what was I upset about? Or what was I
Right.
angry about? What was I happy? What was
Yeah.
that? Oh, yeah, now I remember. Right, okay.
Yeah.
And it's like it's gone somewhere else, and you're not aware of it. And
Yeah.
it's just because it's what you've been doing for so long that
Right.
your mind almost can't separate the good from the bad,
Right.
and it just
Right.
kind of funnels everything away, and then
Right.
you're just kind of left going, what was I thinking? What was that? What was this?
E-
Oh yeah,
ex-
right, now give it back, give it back.
exactly.
Yeah, give it back. I want
Right.
to think about that.
I
Yeah.
will accept that feeling now.
Yeah, yeah, and for me, you were saying that you have a real problem with joy and feeling happy and content, and oh gosh, I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever felt comfortable with those emotions, which is
Yeah.
devastating when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
It's something that everybody ought to have a good relationship with, is when something good happens,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
feel good about it. And actually, I was saying this to my husband yesterday morning. I got a new client. And I'd written a piece for this client as a test piece,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a meeting with him about it, and he was discussing it with me, and he said something akin to, that's one of the best test pieces I've ever read.
Oh, wow.
And I felt good about that, but then I thought maybe not. It just went.
Right. Right.
And I said to my husband, why can I not take compliments? Why can I? And I said, it's actually getting annoying to me now, because I'm now aware that I'm not
Right.
doing it.
Right.
And I'm like, why can't I do it? Why can't
Yeah.
I take a compliment from somebody and it be genuine, and it not just kind of be like, okay, thank you.
I get it. It's like, can I just experience that feeling of,
Pride,
yeah,
happiness. Yeah.
yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
It's all because of self esteem, and it's all because it's alien.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
alien.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much to dissociation that is devastating on the face of it.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
and then there's the inevitable emotional dysregulation that comes with it. Because if you haven't been in an environment where you can safely explore your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
it can become impossible to regulate them. Like we were saying, I don't feel comfortable with joy, happiness.
Right.
Uh, I
Right.
feel comfortable with very powerful, somewhat negative emotions.
Right. Right.
You lose all of the regulation that you kind of need,
Mm-hmm.
to function. And then you have to relearn it, or just learn it for the first time. And you're just kind of going,
Exactly. You certainly didn't experience it. There are a lot of times I'm reading something on LinkedIn about,
mm,
maybe it'll be about parenting and, listening
mm,
to the child. It's like a foreign language to me. I'm like, what?
yeah. Huh?
Oh, children, you listen to the child has a voice.
You
They
do
get
that?
what?
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
like, I can't even conceive of
I
of
no,
what
I
that is.
I remember one time, and I was absolutely astounded. I was dealing with a professional from the government. I can't remember why. This was a few years ago, so I think it might have been council tax related, and there'd been an issue somewhere. And I said something along the lines of, "Look, this is really stressing me out." I just said it, and they were incredibly apologetic, because the error was on their end. But they were like, "Oh, we're so sorry. We
Oh
will
wow.
do this, and we will do this, and I kind of thought, hang on a minute. So my emotions matter.
They listened.
I can say that I'm not happy, and I won't get told to be quiet and shut up and all of these negative things.
That's
And
called normal. It's like, what?
that's normal. And it's been said about my defender also, and it's a devastating statement which rings so true, is that he sees the world in shades of red when the real world is actually beige. And this is what the older male author has said about him, because he knows him pretty well. He's known him for longer than I have. And he said he sees danger everywhere. Everywhere. It's everywhere all the time. He's overstimulated, he can't cope. It's like he's
Yeah.
drilling into his head. But the real world is beige.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the disconnect. And that's what we were saying about you can feel happy, you can feel these things, and you don't have to look for the red in
Right.
everything.
Right.
Sometimes it's beige, sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's green, sometimes it's a different color. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
What I hope out of this conversation is one that people are going to have a better understanding of the different layers of disassociation
Mm,
that are there. And
mm,
that I've got to believe most people will have some kind of experience. If there is any kind of stress, trauma, or something that you experience, or you're just not in the moment,
mm,
if you
mm.
decide, I'm going to go shopping instead of dealing with that problem.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to realize that disassociation is completely normal. My therapist said to me that, it's a sign that your brain was doing what it was meant to do,
Yeah.
which was cutting it out so you could survive, cutting out. And we don't
Hmm.
only see it in dangerous situations or scary ones, we see it in boring ones. Like, I think we've all been in a talk or a lecture or something, and we've just kind of gone, oh, I'm so gone from this.
Right.
You phase out, and then you come back, you're like, what? Sorry, what were you saying? Um,
Exactly. Exactly. Or when you're driving, I know there are many times I'm driving along that it's like, oh, what?
yeah,
You're kind of like on automatic or
yeah, and that's the famous one, isn't it? It's like get from point A to
right,
point B. Oh, how was your car drive? I don't know.
right,
My husband has it sometimes when he's riding his bike. I used to get it when I was going into work on the train. You just kind of go,
hmm
and
yeah,
you disconnect because your brain's going, okay, this isn't important, but it's in a different context. It's in a context of
right,
this is so boring. I'm
right,
cutting it out.
right,
um, Whereas when it's trauma, it's I'm cutting it out because you can't
yeah,
survive with misinformation,
right,
or you don't need to remember that it's not good for your
hmm
survival. And disassociation is, like I said, it's my therapist described it as it's everybody does it, everybody's experienced it, every bit, to the level where
hmm
it becomes DID or OSDD or dissociative amnesia. Not many people have
hmm
experienced that.
right,
Luckily for them, right?
right, yeah.
Luckily for them,
Oh, very, very true.
it's one of my favorite sayings is that you haven't experienced it, and that's great. And
Yes,
that's great.
that
I'm
is
very
so,
happy for
so
you.
true.
Mm,
And, in talking with you, I find a comfort in that I'm talking to someone that understands
yes. Yes.
some of the things I've gone through and how we respond to these things.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful, one, that you're very willing, to talk about this because I don't think we could be more vulnerable than sharing our truth about what we've experienced and what we've survived, and
Yeah.
then how our brain has allowed us our chosen path of then working through it, that we are working hard to live the lives that we deserve,
Yes.
and hoping that that will encourage and give other people courage to do the same thing for themselves, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be about disassociation, but
No.
if it's just about you're not feeling good about yourself or what other people are telling you, all you can
Mm,
do is take care of yourself. You can't take care of anybody else. Take care of
no.
yourself, and you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong in walking that path of
No.
who you are and who you want to be. Because I still feel I'm figuring out who I am because I've spent so much time not
Yeah.
knowing.
Yeah. I get that completely. And it's because it's all been pushed away, hasn't it? It's like it's
Yeah.
been, the development into who you are has been
Mhm.
pushed to one side for
Mhm.
survival, which will
Mhm.
always be, it will always be the number one
Right.
in the mind. It's
Right.
always survival. It's always the first thing that it wants
Yeah.
to do is
Yeah.
survive. Yeah. At the cost of everything else, it doesn't matter.
Right. But
Exactly.
it has to be the priority. It has
Oh yeah, of
to.
course. Of course.
Lizzie, I cannot thank you enough.
No,
I have
it's,
so enjoyed our conversation,
yes.
and I look forward to continuing our relationship
Oh,
and
for sure.
maybe having you back because
Oh
there are
yeah.
so many things, to talk
Oh,
about and
I,
to
I
deal
could
with. So,
I could talk for hours.
yeah,
And I have. I'm
exactly.
looking at the thing, I'm like, oh
Right.
God,
And in
okay.
fact, we have.
We have. Oh good.
Oh,
Fab. Fabulous. Yes. So
oh,
I've really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping that the process of opening up
yeah,
about this will help with healing for both of us, and hopefully
yes,
for other people as
I
well who are
agree.
going through it.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, my dear, I'm sending you
Okay.
blessings and love.
And you. Okay. Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you,
me.
sweetheart.
Thank you for joining me today on Living in Midbloom. I hope you found this episode insightful, meaningful, and maybe it's given you something to think about. I invite you to share your positive reviews or ideas on topics you would like me to touch on by leaving your comments on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict. We are all divine beings who just want to be seen, heard, and loved. Have a beautiful day.